Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Bismillah, alhamdulillah, wassalatu wassalamu ala rasulillahi amma ba'd. I am very, very grateful for your very kind presence in our webinar tonight. And I'm very, very excited to introduce for the first time in full, inshallah, our vision of a true education, bi-idhnillahi ta'ala. And the Tajdeed Club has been brewing in at the back of my mind in various, it has taken various forms over the years. But in this current form, I believe it truly has the power to work as a form of education for the masses, as opposed to being a small knit, small scale project. It can be global, inshallah. So I'll share the screen and we'll jump in right into our presentation for tonight. Right. Hopefully all of us can see this screen, inshallah. Right, brothers and sisters, I present to you the Tajdeed Club. Now, the word Tajdeed is a masdar in the Arabic language, and it refers to the act of renewing or revival. Renew something, to present something anew, something that existed, but it was forgotten, but you present it anew in front of the people so that they may benefit from the lost wisdom that was once part of their beings. And the Prophet ﷺ, he is reported to have said in a hadith where he mentioned that for every 100 years, Allah Azza wa Jal raises for this ummah a Mujaddid who renews the religion of this ummah for them. He revives them, he resuscitates, he breathes the soul back into this ummah every century. Although the actual chain of this is weak, however, the ulama have commented on this for centuries, that this hadith is of sound meaning. And we have seen various Mujaddideen over the heads of different centuries over the course of our glorious history. Okay, so the Tajdeed Club is one part or one component of the trident form of education that Tajdeed Seminary envisions. So Tajdeed Seminary, of course, wants to tackle the problems that we're facing on the religious education front. So how we are training our current generation of scholars on the religious front of it. And on the other side, training comprehensively educated Muslims, generally speaking. Okay, so to target the religious training of ulama, we have the mentorship program, of which the first batch we have already started, alhamdulillah. The Tajdeed Club is supposed to complement that training and as well as serve as a standalone education platform for all types of students. Inshallah, I'll mention who this club is for, bi'idhnillahi ta'ala, just as we progress into this presentation. To begin, our ambitions need to be stated very, very carefully. So when I say that the Tajdeed Club is supposed to become the training ground of the Mujaddideen, we're being very, very clear with that goal. We're not being shy of it. We are saying that the Tajdeed Club, it's a radical form of education for a radical times, right? We are facing a problem on a mass in our education systems where young students spend 12 years, 13 years, 14 years, 16, 20 years in an education system, and by the end of it, they not only end up with no education, no skills, no mastery of anything, and unfortunately, most of the time, no jobs either. The whole promise of employment at the end of this route, subhanAllah, you don't really get that. Okay, so what we are proposing, our ambitions are, is a global no school and no university movement. We believe that education can be acquired much more efficiently and in a much more accessible way if we just simply had no structure. This corporate uh, institutionalized structure of education that schools and universities provide us, which most often than not hinder the process of education than otherwise. So I use the word radical because radical in linguistic terms means something which is free. It is not bound by anything. It is not limited. It is not shackled, right? So a radical education because it is against all norms of our current education systems. Everyone in our modern societies feels a need to send their kids to schools because that's how education is supposed to be. And if someone does not go to school, then somehow they are not educated and they can't ever be educated as someone who has gone to school. However, we would argue that education really truly stems from a personal habit of wanting to learn and truly seeking to enlighten their minds. Anyone who wants to enlighten their minds, they can educate themselves by books, right? Libraries are full of books, and you can read books on all types of subjects, And of course, it will be counterproductive to just jump into any kind of book. We know that there has to be some sort of sense to how you approach reading and studying, which is why you need some sort of plan, a expertly guided, structured, curated program where from the millions and millions of books that are out there, more books than the most powerful supercomputer can handle, right? Let alone for feeble human beings like ourselves, right? So it makes sense that we narrow down our list. And if you do the maths, an average human being, especially now so, but the people are reading less and less compared to the past. A normal person, an average person, is not going to read as much literature in their entire life um, as many books there are in the world, right? It's not going to happen. And if we are going to stick to, say, an average of one book a month, which is unfortunately becoming an average nowadays, one book a month is 12 books, 12 books in a year. That's 120 books in 10 years, right? In 50 years, that's about 500 or 600 books, close to that, right? So from the millions and millions of books, you can only really get to 500, 600 books. And of these books, of course, you want to make sure that they are truly those books that matter, right? Education that matters. Now, if you want to acquire all of this knowledge by a university program, think about this scenario. When you go to university, a university program offers you some sort of qualification over the course of 4 years or 3 years in the UK. But over the 3 years, if you analyze the structure of how the degrees are paced, you only really study 4 months out of 12 months if you look at the intensity of the study session, term time, right? So 4 months out of 12 months is actual study time. So if you were to do times that by three, which is a normal degree period, you would end up with 12 months of actual study in 3 years. So truly, if you were to get rid of the formal university structure of education, you could accelerate learning. You could truly accelerate learning, and it is indeed possible for a human being, even in our times, to master a lot of sciences. And it is at the junction of many sciences that new breakthroughs and new developments and new discoveries and inventions are made. Okay, so we have within our ambitions to provide an education that truly matters, right? Choosing the right literature that has been experimented with, and we know that actually matters, and it is literature, the literature that is worth studying, right? So a no school, no university movement. Educate yourselves, bear the burden of your education upon your own shoulders, with the help of an expert, guided reading structure, and guided inquiries while you read, and so on and so forth, right? An education that truly matters, that will really give you value. And then it has to be accessible, right? You shouldn't be going bankrupt while you uplift your minds through this education. You shouldn't be ending up with thousands and thousands of dollars or pounds in debt, only to seek employment, but then having no guarantee of any employment by the end of it, right? And lastly, to provide a comprehensive coverage of all great works of the Western and Islamic tradition. This is the kind of education that they propose in the great universities as we know them: Columbia, Harvard, Stanford, Oxford, Cambridge, and so on and so forth. But the huge price tag and so little that you get out of it is astounding. So we want to change that, inshallah. That's our ambitions. Right. So how is the Tajdeed Club actually structured? Now, the curriculum levels I've mentioned here in front of you only reflect the current program that we're launching. However, the Tajdeed Club is supposed to be a completely comprehensive education in English and the Arabic literature, right? So there will be literature, which of course is studied through this way. So you study uh, all the technical things. So you start off with the building blocks where you fix yourself, learn how to learn, build systems in your lives. So you learn the science behind building yourself up first. So some of that would be some modern classics that have been written very, very well on this subject that we have chosen out of the hundreds and hundreds of books that have been written on personal development and building yourself as a learner and achieving mastery in things and so on and so forth, right? Supercharging your learning. That's the level one, the building blocks, right? And then you read history, extensive, comprehensive study of history of all knowledge. So history of all possible subjects that are important. So history of political science, economics, computer science, mathematics, logic, philosophy, all of that. And then, of course, you study the history of civilization. So from uh, the ancient civilizations all the way to the modern. Okay, so you have to comprehensively educate yourself in the history of you as a human being after you've built yourself up from ground up. And then once you have a very, very comprehensive overview of how thought has developed about all the different things that you observe in the world, that's the time then to jump into level three, where you get hands-to-hand training with the technical subjects, right? So you actually study the technical sciences. So you would be studying classical works in economics that have changed the fields of economics. For example, the Principles of Economics by Marshall, and Marshall was a one of the Nobel Prize winners in economics. And so you'll be reading that literature, a literature that is unfortunately not really uh, looked at or normally studied. And then once you've acquired the technical foundations to actually tackle the great books, you jump in to the great books. And the great books are essentially the best books of our human civilization, books that have changed the world. They have made the world the way it is now. Okay, so the great books. So that's the English side of curriculum. And then, of course, after this is done, we will launch a separate master's level reading list to for those students who would like to continue and perhaps choose a particular field to master. And there'll be a comprehensive reading list, something that would span the content of a bachelor's and a master's degree combined, and something that you could, with a focused study, you could finish in roughly a year and a half and 2 years. Okay. And that would, you'd be provided for lists, the reading lists for different subjects for that. And not just reading lists, you'll be provided reading guides, curated questions and milestones, and so on and so forth. All the perks that you should have had in a normal education system, but you never truly had, right? And then there's the Arabic side of it, which inshallah we will launch in the future, in the upcoming future, near future, bi-idhnillahi ta'ala. And that is the study of the all the works that so the mentorship program is supposed to train you like a mujtahid and a faqih and a mufassir, right? The point of that is not to cover books cover to cover, right? We are being very, very precise with our training over there. But in this, we want to cover books cover to cover. So we have a list of books in Aqidah, books in Hadith, in Shuruhat, books in Arabic grammar, actual literature, uh, actual classical literature on these sciences. So a complete Islamic studies, Arabic studies program, and of course, history of Arabic civilization, Islamic civilization, and so all the subjects they can possibly imagine. It'd be a carefully crafted list of and reading program, inshallah, for the Arabic side of things as well. So that's the curriculum. But the foundations start over here because most of our audience is an English-speaking audience, and some of our students have just started with us on the mentorship, so they're learning Arabic. So we can't launch the Arabic program right now. However, we want to begin with the English curriculum, bi'idhnillahi ta'ala. Now, before I jump into the second component of this presentation, which is the reading, types of reading, and how to read and so on and so forth, which is the main objective of today's webinar, I'll just briefly mention who this club is suitable for. Okay, it is definitely suitable for طلاب العلم, seekers of knowledge, students of knowledge who are studying in Islamic universities, because this is the kind of comprehensive education that they will not get anywhere else. And this is the type of comprehensive education they need to provide value when they go back to their communities. They need to understand the modern legal structures, the economic, fiscal policies, and international policy, international relations, how things are working, so that they can truly place their ilm in the right context and make the right decisions for their community and their communities and guide them. So that's a no-brainer. This is something that Ibn Qayyim rahimahullah, he has mentioned that half of ilm is knowing the Sharia, but then the rest, the other half, is to implement it. And you can't implement it if you're not comprehensively educated in the ulum, the sciences, the knowledge of your times. Secondly, we believe that this is perfectly suitable for all students, but students have to be of a mature age. They should be able to read good English, and that's the only requirement really. And by maturity, we demand from them something 13 to 14 years of age. That is a rough standard of maturity, inshallah. It doesn't have to be, too old. 13 to 14 is a good starting age for this kind of curriculum, inshallah, I believe. And it is particularly beneficial for homeschooled students, for students who are being homeschooled, okay? Because this is a curriculum that is meant to be unstructured and to be as paced as the student wishes it to be. If he wants to go as fast as he wants, they can. If they want to go slow with it, they can do that as well, right? So it is a completely self-paced program, bi'idhnillahi ta'ala. Now, when I say homeschool student, it is also particularly beneficial for parents. This kind of program would be extremely, extremely beneficial for parents who are truly sincere about raising well-educated and righteous children. Because this kind of training will help a parent become comprehensively educated in different important sciences, and especially the building blocks level. It truly will give you the tools that you need to craft a well-functioning family, inshallah. So as a parent, you would get to learn about systems that you can place place in your lives. You learn about habits, how to build habits, how to learn for mastery, how to learn with intent and purpose, and problem solve for things, and making how to not do education, how not to lead a household as a parent, so that your children end up hating knowledge. Don't do, parents need to learn how to educate their children. So it's very, very beneficial for the parents as well. It is also very, very beneficial, I believe, for the Muslim entrepreneurs. Running a business, running something that is supposed to provide value to the community, I say Muslim entrepreneurs because this whole project is really intended for the Muslims. It's not meant for, although it's open for others, but it's meant for Muslims, first and foremost. And Muslim entrepreneurs, by entrepreneurs, I mean true entrepreneurs who are really set out to solve the big problems of our communities in the world, it is going to be truly beneficial for them because it is going to give them the basira, the the comprehensive outlook on the problems. They'll be able to see in a way the problems which they have not seen. They'll be able to reason with their ideas in a way that they have not been able to do. So education will open up their minds to their problems in a way that they'll help them. They'll be conducive to the solutions that they will find for those problems. And of course, to be an entrepreneur is to be very highly disciplined. And you can't do that if you don't build the right systems and habits and you train yourself for mastery and perfection in your craft that you are doing and all the right tools that you need. Then you need to be well grounded in the history of your particular context for whatever you are trying to fix. For example, myself, if I'm running this project and my intention is to fix the lack of education or ill education of our communities globally, then I truly have to understand the history of education. I have to understand how pedagogy works, right? How education systems work, how they are structured, what kind of benefit do they impart, and what harm do they do at the same time. So I would study, I would read the history of education theory. I would read all of that, right? So all of that is covered, inshallah, within our program. So you study comprehensive uh, history of knowledge and the civilization after you've built yourself up, ground up, perfecting your learning and your habits and your systems and aiming for mastery and so on and so forth. And then you would be gaining technical knowledge of different various important sciences. And then if you choose to continue down that path, you can continue to educate yourself and engage with the great books of our human civilization. And last but not least, I believe this is paramount. This kind of reading and this kind of program would be paramount for those people who want to make a change in the world, especially the du'at who give da'wah for the sake of Allah Azza wa Jal. And really, the job of a da'i is to change the society they're in because they want to move the entire society towards a belief in Allah Azza wa Jal. And the best way to do that is to be able to interact with the community at their level. And you can't do that if you don't understand them. And the best way to understand the people is to know about them, is to learn about them, is to learn their language, their history, and the kind of uh, uh, vocations and professions they're involved in. I would definitely mention here as well that someone who is an imam and a da'i in a say a Western community in a town, for example, he would definitely need to be giving Islamic guidance on a lot of different fields. There might be a brother or a sister working in a bank, right? They'll have to understand how fiscal policy works and how banks work. So to really convince a person that they should give up a job in a bank, they shouldn't be doing a job in a bank, and why so and so and so forth. So to give advice on basira, not just a haphazard blind followed advice so that people don't really get convinced and they don't really get attached to you because the whole point of da'wah is to bring people closer to you. And the most educated person, the most illuminated person in terms of his intellect and his soul, uh, only he or she has the ability to do that. Okay, so I believe for all those reasons, the particular persons I've mentioned here, they should consider joining our program, بإذن الله تعالى. طيب, let's move on to the actual objective of our webinar, the interesting thing, inshallah. So now we're going to look at briefly the levels of reading, how they work, what each stage refers to, what it means, and then we'll apply all of this to an actual 3-page document that we're going to read right now today, inshallah, together. So we will be applying all of this. So you see how reading should happen and why a well-crafted, expertly milestoned journey in a book is important, right? And advice as well. Because the main objective is not just to read books, it's to provide Islamic guidance. So when we read, for example, a book on Islamic, let's say we read a book on psychology, we're not just learning psychology, we are going to be putting it against Islam and seeing how Islam answers those same questions that the modern psychology is asking. Does Islam have solutions to that? How does Islam express the same answers? What kind of language did Islam use? Where is the modern psychology going wrong, and how can Islam fix it so that the new vistas open up to you, new doors open up for new inquiries, and then you can, inshallah, provide breakthroughs. And one of the key skills that you'd learn at the end of it, at the rhetoric stage, is to be able to produce work. So you will be learning research skills in our program as well, inshallah. So research skills, how to research, how to write and express yourself is paramount. So how do you read? So these three stages are applicable to all kinds of learning, not just reading. It's also applicable to listening, okay? Any kind of content. In fact, listening to, especially to just hard thrown facts at you, for example, from the media outlets, day and night. People, they go from getting the fact in and not completing this first stage and jumping right to the rhetoric stage. Okay, and I'll explain what I mean by that. The grammar stage is all about taking in the information, collecting all the facts, making sure you are fully aware of what you're reading, right? So there's no stone left unturned. So you're fully comprehensively aware of the subject that you're looking at. Then the second stage is where you engage with the content. After you've made yourself aware of the structure of it, the overall, the bigger picture of the content that you're engaging with. Once you've got that bigger picture, then you start to logically and critically engage with the content. Okay, that's the logic stage. And then once you've completely and honestly done your due diligence of engaging critically and analytically with the content, then you come in a position to actually express an opinion. People express their opinions all the time, and that is the problem. They're ill-educated. They don't make educated conclusions. They don't make educated. They don't have educated opinions. When they express things, they are based on ignorance, really. And we see this all the time. A lot of instances that we find, problematic instances that we find amongst us, is that people fight for no reason. And when you really get to the bottom of it, you realize that the entire reason the fight really started was that one party did not really understand the other. They never completed the grammar stage, let alone the logic stage. They jumped right to the rhetoric stage by expressing their hate and disdain and spite for the other person and their whatever the person said or did. So this applies to all kinds of intake of information and then our reactions to it. Okay, so there should be a process, the way you input things in your mind, how you do that, and then to critique and engage with it analytically, just so that you can truly understand the arguments, the case, the thesis of the author, and then to make a judgment, express an opinion in an educated manner. Okay, so let's jump into quickly, inshallah, into each of these stages. The first stage is the grammar stage, right? And all this is to understand, right? Understand. And this understanding is roughly two types of reading that you specifically do. Let's say you open up a book and it's 100 pages long. Let's say, assume that. The first reading is not when you start poking fingers at the author, start to criticize him. That's not the first thing that you do. You read through it. You just read through it with an unbiased manner. You read through it. Make up your mind about what they're saying. Try to understand. Don't miss, the forest for the trees. Don't do that. Don't miss the bigger picture. The first stage is to get an overall idea of what the author is trying to convey. So you go through a cursory reading of the book. Okay, so you just read without trying to take notes, much notes. Just underlining important things that you think, this is important. And okay, so this is he's trying to get to this point. Nice. He's trying to understand, you're trying to understand his argument, how he's developing. So you're trying to understand the meaning and the structure of the book. So if it's a 100-page book, you understand, okay, so the first 20 pages are perhaps talking about, let's say, the definitions of the things that he's going to talk about later. The next 15 or 20 pages, they talk about its development, the development of those definitions. The next 30 or 40 pages talk about the application of those definitions, right? And in the last remaining pages, they just talk about the further possibility of expanding and improving such definitions of a perhaps any field, right? So this would just be an elementary reading. So you're reading for the structure, so you understand the structure. Okay, so he's talked about X, Y, and Z. He's made X, Y, and Z points. If I could summarize the whole book, the whole 100 pages in perhaps 2 to 3 lines without a break, I could do that, right? And I could also show you these are the nice passages that I quite enjoyed, and I would like to go back and re-engage with them in a deeper manner. And I would also know which parts of the book are actually worth going back towards. Some, it's a book is never completely worthwhile your time once you've read it, right? Only certain portions of it are important and worthy of revisiting and engaging with. Sometimes it's just filler content, right? And most of modern literature, unfortunately, is that. Someone writes a book on habits, and another person comes along 10 years later, he just revamps the whole thing and produces another work on habits. He just calls it Atomic Habits, right? You could have just got the same content from the first book if you just read it well enough. You don't need to develop and produce unnecessary information. Okay, so you read through those, so highlight, and you post it. You put your post-it notes and take a mental note of, hey, this is the structure. These are the important passages. This is this body of the book. This portion of the book really summarizes everything. This is where the crux, of the whole thesis is. So you essentially read for meaning, and you read for structure, and you analyze the important sentences, the important passages, where the arguments are. And perhaps at this stage, you're also reading for vocabulary. Because when you read a book in a different field that you've not come across before, you'll definitely come across words and vocabulary of that science. And perhaps your reading is not that well polished, right? So you're reading good literature for the first time, perhaps. Not everyone has the best education in the school years, or they're not serious enough in the school years to read enough, to be able to engage with good literature that well in the first instance. So they would need to be paying attention to important vocabulary, beautiful expressions, and so they would also have where they have a journal where they're wrestling with the important passages and ideas and structure. They would also have another vocabulary phrase book where they're jotting down nice vocabulary and phrases and so on and so forth. And that this is especially true for someone who's learning a new language like Arabic and so on and so forth. And inshallah, so all of this is the first stage, grammar stage. You take in information, you understand it in terms of its meaning, in terms of its structure, its important elements, and so on and so forth. But at this moment, you have not tried to. You've not tried to poke holes. You've not tried to be critical with anything because you want to give the author a full chance to express himself first before you make up your mind about them. There will be certain portions of certain books that you could immediately say, you know what, this is wrong, and that will happen, and that's completely fine, right? But as a general principle, you do this thing first. Over time, once you've trained enough in reading, it's a skill that you can hone over time, you can perfect. You will become comfortable in combining the grammar stage with the next stage, which is the logic stage. This is when you start to revisit the book. So you've done your first reading, which is the elementary and introspectional reading, and then you go back and you now start to engage with the arguments. Okay, this is what we call the analytical reading. So you analyze, you truly understand the strength and the iron of the arguments in a book. Which of the important passages you read needed your time to revisit? You go back to them and you say, okay, you know what, this is summarizing its arguments. Does it make sense? You ask questions. You try to connect dots where the author has not even gone. You try to engage other forms of, perhaps you read something in economics and and now you're engaging with political theory, and you're like, okay, so what I read in economics that actually has a bearing on this particular topic that I'm looking to, but the author has completely missed it. So let me just see where I can go with this, right? So you start to connect things with other pieces of knowledge that you know. So you ask questions, you poke holes, you see, okay, you know what? I think the author is wrong over here. Or how can I see that the author is wrong? So you truly and surely try to create a pathway for yourself where in between the lines, where it doesn't exist on the face value of it. So you're really, really critical at this stage. Okay, that's the analytical reading. You're asking questions, you're poking holes, you're breaking everything apart, and then you're reconstructing things from based on what you know, and you're connecting with other things that you already know and you've read, and perhaps you can go and visit, inshallah, and we'll see some of it today. And another portion, another step of another type of reading that happens at this stage is a syntopical reading, where you synchronize knowledge of the same topic from different literature. Perhaps you're reading a political theory book at the moment, and it talks about capital, the capitalist fascism, for example. Well, let's, for the sake of ease, let's just talk about liberalism, right? So liberalism is a form of political organization in a society, right? And then it has strands of education and movement, and and so on and so forth. So it has a social strand, has an education strand. So it tries to propel its philosophies through the well structured education programs and NGOs and well funded international charity organizations, so on and so forth. So now you have this topic of liberalism. You've read a book and you've done the first stage. You know everything the author is talking about. You've understood him well, and now you've also engaged with all of his theories, and you critically analyzed everything that he's done and said, and you poked holes in his thesis. You've understood, you try to understand, or at least you think that you've got to a point where you see where the author has gone wrong. Then you start to expand yourself, and you start looking at other literature that has been written on the same topic. So this is same topical. You synchronize your reading on the same topic from other literature. Okay, so you try to inform yourself on the topic and its argument in the most comprehensive manner as possible, so that you can truly make a judgment on it. Once you've done all that hard work, that is when you are deserving to of making a judgment, of making or having an opinion. If you've not done this much work, you unfortunately do not have the right to express anything. You don't have the right to have an opinion on anything, because if you've not done this work and you've not been intellectually honest with yourself, you're truly only going to come up with conclusions which are based on pure sentiments and not careful thought. So very, very important that we do this. And then you get to the last stage, which is the rhetoric stage. Rhetoric is the art of expression, the art of beautiful, persuasive expression. All right. So now that you've understood things well and you've critiqued them and you've read them, read about them widely, and you've connected it with all the other pieces of knowledge on that topic, for example, right? Now is the time to come up with your thesis, a fresh thesis, right? Bring something to the table of your own. Express your opinion now and say that I think this is where he went wrong, or this is where I think his thesis is incomplete, and I propose this as a step forward, and I believe so and so should be the next thesis, or the next step in this particular field. I think this is where we should go, and so this is the time to express. This is the time to really persuade others that I've actually done my work. I've done my due diligence. I have the right to express something valuable on this topic, and then you do that. Okay, so this is your rhetoric stage. So, inshallah, now I want to engage with all of you in real time through a piece of classical importance. It is a letter written by none other than Thomas Jefferson, one of the founding fathers of the United States of America. And we're not concerned about who the man was and how he was and so on and so forth. We want to engage with a small piece of literature so that we can apply what we have learned today, inshallah. So let me just share the screen with you so we can read this together, inshallah. Right. Just confirm, please, inshallah, that everyone can see the screen, bi'idhnillah. Okay. Great. Alhamdulillah. Right. So, of course, I'm not teaching here. We're going to be doing the work together. I've left the side for highlights and notes on the side. So I want us to read this. I'm going to mute myself and I'm going to give you 10 minutes, inshallah, to read through this. And all of you are going to do the work. Okay. This is a letter that Thomas Jefferson wrote to his nephew, his future son-in-law. Oh, yes, cousin marriages. Thomas Mann Randolph, who was studying in Edinburgh at the time. And this is his advice on how to learn, right? And how to best use his time for learning. So you, inshallah, will go through this and mind the spellings of this because this is written in that, in English of that time. So certain spelling conventions are not the same. So you'd find certain spellings which you'll just have to make up. You just have to make sense of them. Okay, inshallah. So let the timer begin. I'll slowly just scroll down, inshallah. So try and keep up, inshallah. This is just the elementary reading, okay? We're just going through the first step, just elementary reading. We're not making any notes. We're just, not going through anything deep, nothing. Just read through it, understand what he's saying. Has everyone read, inshallah? Right. Since this is just an elementary reading, it doesn't matter if we skip a few things, just so that we understand the major structure, because we're reading for meaning and structure, right? So we can skip a few, details here and there as well. Right, inshallah, when everyone's ready, just give me a thumbs up so we can go back and do the inspectional reading now for structure and meaning, putting it together. Then, all right, alhamdulillah. Right, so let's go back to the top. All right, before we begin our second stage of second type of reading, the first stage, I want everyone, every single one, to express in a sentence the two important things that Thomas Jefferson has expressed in this letter to his nephew. The whole lecture, the whole letter is structured around two things, right? What are they? Excellent, right? One of the sisters has answered quickly. Everyone, quickly, please. Type it away, inshallah. I want everyone to engage. I want everyone to reply to this quickly, please, inshallah. So I know that everyone is with me, inshallah, on this. So we can see a rough skeleton of this letter, right? He focused on advice regarding learning. So he wants to advise his nephew as to how to learn, and then secondly, to take care of yourself. Excellent, mashallah, to take care of your physical health. And then he's talked about about each of these 2 points in some detail. Well done, mashallah. Right, right. So can we, with this structure, can we safely put in a single sentence what his purpose is behind this writing? So we know the structure and we understand the rough meaning of it. Can we now say something about the purpose of this letter? Has the author himself mentioned something to that regard? That he's doing this, he's writing this for this particular purpose? He's done that, right? So let's now, inshallah, begin the second inspectional step, which is essentially we're just going to break down the whole thing into its relevant parts. This says, I'm honored with your favor, da 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 da, without delay of this, and which must be the better choice with which you are surrounded. This is where he said, I shall venture to you some thoughts on the course of your studies. Okay, I shall venture. Okay, right. So your studies. And then later, we read that I should have performed the office of a half a friend, where I to confine myself to the improvement of the mind only, right? Health is more so. So this is the second important piece of structure, right? So this is to do with learning and to do with exercise. So the exercise bit was just simply easy. The best exercise is walking and how much walk is necessary in a day and so on and so forth. He just tells about his experience and he tells about his. We'll just come to that inshallah in a second. So the first thing, he expresses his reason for writing this. Okay. Then he says he expresses how a longer race through life, the more experience in life, has given him more observation, and so he's aware he's in a position where he can advise him better because he has more exposure to life, and of course not just life in the country that they're growing up in, and the things which are important that he should train himself in now before he's to come back and serve his country. Okay, right. So then this is the structure for that, right? Then let's just do this in green, right? Then he wants to tell him that the foundations which you have laid in languages and mathematics are proper for every superstructure. And then he takes all of this point, um, to here, right? So in this, he's saying essentially the foundation of your education has been in languages and mathematics. Now, why does he say that? Right? That's a question that you can ask yourself. You write that down, right? But inshallah, we'll come to that. So he's telling him that you've already said the foundation of a good aptitude in languages and mathematics. Languages help with memory, and mathematics help with reasoning, and so on and so forth. If you have a good foundation in languages, if you can read well, if you can engage with good literature, and you have a good, strong foundation in language, and you can reason well, you've gone through some training in mathematics, initial mathematics at least, then you have at least a foundation to build on this. That's why he uses the word superstructure. So you understand from this that, this is so he's talking about the foundation, right? Then he says, once you've acquired that foundation that is strong enough to build upon it, the second order of preparation is to commence. And this is where he says, educate yourself comprehensively. Okay. So he goes on to say that you should educate yourself comprehensively. Okay. So his reason, his experience, then a backdrop of his education and how that is the key. And then he goes on to say what the next step should be. And he says, while you are in Edinburgh, essentially, all of that, right, should be acquired. This is the stage to do it, right? Comprehensively educate yourself in the sciences of your time. And then he, gives his personal subjective preferences for botany and physics because as botany will always amaze you because, America is full of herbs and so on and so forth. I mean, all places are, but, and then he says will amaze you, in every season because physics is applicable. The laws of physics are applicable all the time, right? So, subhanAllah, he is expanding on this particular point, right? But then he's saying that don't think of yourself as mastering any of these sciences. Definitely, you're going to um, sort of incline towards one or two things out of all of this, right? And that's natural. Then you should give more attention to that. So he's giving you that principle of learning, educate yourself comprehensively. And then from that comprehensive education, you choose certain things which you feel inclined towards, right? So you dig deeper into them. You try to at least master to some degree into that science. But then, of course, within that science as well, he says, you choose carefully, right? So as he is educating himself in all of these sciences, right? He says that all these branches of science will be better attained by attending courses of lectures in them, because he's in Edinburgh, and Edinburgh was famous at that time for professors of the highest caliber of their time. So why is he? This is the question you should be asking yourself. Why is he saying that um, such an opportunity you will never have again? Therefore, to fix no other limits to your stay in Edinburgh. Then you're having got through this whole course. The omission of any part of it will be an affliction and loss to you as long as you live, right? And so forth. So you're going through the important piece of advice because we're going to come back to this important structure points, and then we're going to reason. We're going to look at them, individually, so we truly understand the backdrop and the importance of his advice. Right. He makes a very important statement here, right? So you're understanding and highlighting important statements. Why is it not highlighting? Right. Very important statement. All sciences are auxiliary to every other. So every science is dependent on the other. It feeds into the other science. Right. Very important. Right. So I'm just coloring randomly because this is just to differentiate the different structural points. All of this is an expansion on this, right? So we don't need to highlight every single thing. Right. The second piece of information, or say a second piece of advice that he says he should be doing at this second stage, he says over here, while you are attending these courses, you can proceed by yourself in a regular series of historical readings. It would be a waste of time to attend a professor of this, to going to university to study humanities is a waste of time. Right. And this is Thomas Jefferson, one of the most well-educated people in the Western civilization. Right. Right. So here, let's just color this in red as well because it feeds into the second stage of learning. Okay. Very important. And he just talks about this history and why, it's important and how it exercises principally the memory and how reflection upon this shouldn't be too laborious. It shouldn't be too hard on the mind and so on and so forth. Right. And of course, then he advises him how to not to think of mastering every single portion of history. Just pick a comprehensive path, curriculum, and then stick to things which are of importance to him for him being an American, and English history, British history, for example, and history of Greece and Rome, and European history, but not all history. Like the history of the Orient doesn't really matter to them because, of course, it's not important, and it's a principle that he's mentioning in learning. Choose carefully. Don't waste your time. Right? We come back to, inshallah, we'll analyze each of these things. Right. So then he goes on, he says, all of this is history, and he says, what to read, and so on. So after the history of England, that of America, here too, he mentioned something important. Read the original authors, not compilers. We'll talk about that in a second. So this is something that we will come back and reason upon. Okay. Right. History need not be hurried, but may give way to the other sciences, because history can be pursued after you shall have left your present situation as well as you remain, right? Um, right. Again, this is a good piece of sentence. We just links back to this. Okay. Then he moves on to the second order of preparation, i.e., the third stage of his learning after a good foundation in language and mathematics, and then a comprehensive education in sciences and history. Then he says the last stage of learning should be law, and this is remarkable and is relevant until this day. But we'll come back to this in a second because this is not this stage, right? So this is again to be acquired from books, not from lectures, not from professors. No. A very important point here, all the aid, and this directly feeds into this project that we're building, all the aid you will want with this stage is a catalog of books. You need a list of books, curated, guided readings, chosen, to save yourself the time and the energy, and the focusing only the great books and the important works, and the order in which they are to be read. It is absolutely indifferent in what place you carry on this reading. I should propose you doing it in France. We just skip that bit, right? So it doesn't matter where you are. You can be anywhere in the world, and you can educate yourself on the third level and the last stage of education, which is studying law. Law, essentially, is where everything comes together: politics, economics, you know, international relations, foreign policy. Everything comes together in law. Education, law, civil law, criminal law, every single thing comes together in law, which is why fiqh and becoming a mujtahid and a faqih is the toughest job in the world. It's the toughest job in the world. And this is why we, inshallah, we want to have that segment of our mentorship so that our students, inshallah, who go through this program, they can eventually get to that program where they can study Islamic law and become a mujtahid, inshallah. Right, and then he gives you the benefit of traveling, because you're not bound by a place. When you educate yourself, you can travel, and when you travel, subhanallah, you can benefit from. So he says, go to France and educate yourself there, learn to speak. You'll just learn from the museums and their culture, and the people are nice, and you'll learn to speak French better. And he says to him, right, we must, you know, remain, we must acquiesce, ourselves with the people. Why? Because we must long remain in the closest intimacy, and to whom we are bound by the strong ties of gratitude and policy. A nation, in short, of the most amiable dispositions on earth, the whole mass of which is penetrated with an affection for us. French love the Americans, Americans love the French, as we see very vividly. And then it says you might, before you return to your own country, make a visit. So traveling, so essentially, this whole point is about traveling, continuing your education as you travel if you must. Okay, and then he essentially goes through the point of exercise and how walking is the best exercise and so on and so forth. Inshallah, we'll just comment on that. We can skip this part because this is less important for our purpose here. Is the point is to just dig deeper into a text and show you how it's done. Right. So, alhamdulillah, today, right now, we can say something more now, right? Because we've done the inspectional reading, right? Can now the students, I want all the students to write down bullet points 1, 2, 3, and say what's the first thing he mentions, the second thing he mentions, the third thing he mentions in this first part of his advice about his learning. Where does he begin? What's the next stage of learning? And what's the third stage of learning? And mention briefly in a line or two for each of those bullet points, 1, 2, and 3, how they should be acquired, for example. And the important pieces of advice that he's mentioned. So just go through it, please. 1, 2, 3. Bullet point 1, bullet point 2, bullet point 3. Inshallah. And 1 or 2 sentences to describe the 3 stages of learning and how they should be, how these 3 stages of learning should be conducted. Because that's essentially so we got a good overview, 1 sentence answer as to expressing, okay, you know what, this is what the book is about, this is what he's going to do. Good. You come back and you do this second stage, so you now know the structure and the important points. And then the critical stage will begin after this. Inshallah. All right, inshallah. I'll just keep writing, inshallah. I'll comment on your answers in a bit. From your previous comments, the students who said that to look after your health simultaneously, that was correct. But some of you said to take care of your health while studying or during study, right? That's not what the author said, okay? So you have to be very, very careful how we present the argument of the author or his thesis. Very, very important. This advice is about establishing lifelong habits, right? He's helping his nephew establish lifelong habits of health and learning. Okay, come on, everyone, please, quickly. We have 2 more stages to go through. So what I can do for you, I can just go through these red points, the blue and the red, 2 red points, and then the blue point. This is the 3 stages of learning that he's mentioned, right? This is why we just highlighted them for this purpose, because the whole point of structure is to feed into the second stage, so that we can go back and summarize with a bit more content. So it's like a skeleton that you establish in the first instance, and then you slowly build on. You put meat and fat and so and so on top of that skeleton, right? So we only have one answer. The question is, what are the 3 stages of learning that the author Jefferson has described here? We haven't yet criticized or critiqued or commented on the validity of all of this. We haven't done that, and we shall do that in the next stage. At this moment, we're just trying to understand fully well what he's trying to say, inshallah. Come on, everyone. There's a few of you here, inshallah. Can everyone quickly mention the structure of his advice on learning in bullet points? I want everyone to engage, please. Reading is no easy job. It is a difficult endeavor. It does require mental energy. And just as a side point, the authors who are engaged in classical learning, who read, they say that serious reading, deep reading, can't be done on average for more than 4 hours a day, right? That's the kind of time that you need for a deep study session. 3 to 4 hours. You can't focus that deeply, longer than that. You can continue to read in the day. Learning never exhausts the mind, as I believe one of the philosophers, I believe is Aristotle, who said that, right? Learning never exhausts the mind, but that learning has to vary in the degree of its intensity. But deep reading, difficult literature, important, worthy literature, where you're engaging with concepts and thought, 3 to 4 hours maximum. You can't engage longer than that. Come on, everyone. I'm still waiting for everyone, inshallah, to mention their points. Sister Hannah, Sister Samia, others, everyone, inshallah, please. Very, very good. You see, now we're going to have an ikhtilaf, a difference of an opinion, a difference of understanding now. Very good. MashaAllah. Well done, Sister Hannah. All right, very good. That's a good attempt. I've just read your 3 points, mashallah. Well, I'll just we'll comment on this. Each stage of reading carries importance, and this is true for thought as well. When you're reading news, when you listen to articles, podcasts, you're doing the same step. You're doing the same thing. Anything worthy is at least worthy of being listened to or read two to three times. Elementary reading helps us decide if something is worthy of our time or not. And as I said, in elementary, the first stage, the first level of reading, you don't even have to read all the words. You can skim certain portions just so that you're reading and highlighting the important passages and the structure. So that's what's important, right? And you can go through a lot of books. Like I could have a 500-page book and I could be done with it in one day. If I'm doing the first elementary reading, just going through the main points of it, the main structure, the chapters, and there's some reasons, so on and so forth, I can do that in one day very quickly. And then if I think it's worthy of my time, I can come back and I can do more reps in it. I can break the structure down. I can go deeper. I can engage with it. And then if I think this is worthy of my time, even more, if it's important, I can engage with it critically, and so on and so forth. So you don't have to do all stages of reading on all literature. But inshallah, all of this will be discussed in level 1 readings anyway, inshallah. Right, there's only two responses I've got. What is everyone else doing? There's Sister Isha, Halima, Connie, but there's Rain as well. Hmm. No worries, inshallah. So okay, so let's just move on now. Some of the sisters, I think they're taking their time. Yes, inshallah. And anything that you guys miss, you can catch back on it in the recording. let's just comment on what the sisters have said. So one sister said, study comprehensively through lectures, right? The other sister said about this, study the sciences mentioned in a studious formal education setting. The author does not use the word studious formal education setting, right? Yes, he does use the word lectures, but lectures can be open. This is how I, uh, you know, studied in most of my time in Cambridge, just attending open lectures, right, from world-class researchers, politicians, and professors, and so on and so forth, right? Open lectures. It's not a formal setting. It's open. It's open for everyone. You can come and learn and question and discuss and go, right? Read on your own and so on and so forth. Present your thesis if you have one, right? Have a discussion. So it's not that kind of a studious formal education setting. It's just a lecture, right? It's a lecture. It is more formal, yes, than a self-paced study program like history and law, but definitely, mashallah. So, um, the whole point is at this first level, which you guys are missing, both of you, is the first stage, which are the foundations, laying strong foundations in language and mathematics, in your reasoning and language abilities, linguistic and rational faculties. That's the foundation. If you don't have that, if you've not trained or at least studied to that level, right, you will struggle in acquiring further knowledge because you need to have strong language to engage with higher works, right? One of the first things that you will be doing in the first book that we're going to be covering in our program, the book actually tests you. It makes you go through a series of tests where you will test your level of English and reasoning ability, so you can see where you are, inshallah, as well. Okay, so the first thing is setting those foundations. That's important. Once that foundation is there, the second stage of learning is a comprehensive education. Okay, a comprehensive education. The author mentions lectures, right? And we have those lectures now, and those lectures are sometimes in universities, sometimes they're on YouTube, right? Sometimes those lectures are written and published, like the Feynman lectures on physics, right? Quantum physics and so on and so forth. Okay, so lectures can be of any form. They could be written, they could be spoken. Podcasts where leading researchers discuss things, those are lectures, right? This form of education where you are essentially listening to the crux of an expert's research in the shortest possible time, and you walk away with the most valuable information the person has come up with in the past decade or 2 decades. That's the point of lectures, right? So you short circuit your path to somewhat in expertise or being informed in so many different sciences. Something true, for example. I mean, we've seen this in recent times. The guy Joe Rogan, right, from I think the Rogan Experience podcast or something like that. That person is just commentator, or the wrestling commentator, and now because of his interaction and podcasts with leading experts on different fields and researchers and influencers, you compare his initial learnings with his current learnings, you will see a very sheer contrast how he's developed. So these are all forms of you know acquiring the most important crux of a science from the mouth of the expert himself in the shortest time. That could be done through lectures in a university, could be done on YouTube, could be done, as I said, through a podcast or a book that has been turned from a lecture series, for example. Okay, so that's the second stage. The idea behind that is a comprehensive education, right? And comprehensive education without the intent of mastery. That is important, right? If we want to summarize everything in the most accurate way and we want to represent the author in the best possible manner, we have to make sure we say every single thing that he said. He said comprehensive education, okay? Directly from the words lectures of experts, because Edinburgh apparently is the best place to do that, right? And not with the aim of mastering all of this. You would particularly find one or two sciences compelling over the others. So you can perhaps look into that a bit more. but don't aim to master. This is not the stage for mastery. This is not the stage for expertise, developing expertise. This is just to absorb the expert knowledge in various different fields. Okay, that's the second stage, right? So you're at this point, you are still looking at, okay, you know what, this thing interests me. Okay, good, interesting. I find this interesting as well. I never knew that I would find economics interesting. Good. I didn't think logic would be that useful, right? So your perception changes about everything when you study comprehensively. Okay, that's the second stage, foundation, then comprehensive education, and you match that. You match that comprehensive education with history. Okay, as he says, in times or in chasms of time, otherwise unappropriated or something to that effect, right? Um, so history is to be pursued in the evening because it's less laborious than listening to lectures and being attentive in there and so on and so forth. And it can be done anywhere. So and you can do it. You can slowly pace it, right? So a course of readings in history, and he gave you and that course of readings in history has to be selected, well selected, most important works, original works by original authors, not by compilers, so not like tertiary or secondary sources, primary sources. Engage with the primary sources. Okay, that's the two-part learning that's happening in the second stage. Okay, and then he expresses that again he has to be choosy in what he reads and whatnot, and then he has to make sure that he reads more of what is applicable to him as an American. So history of Europe and Britain and Greece and Rome and whatnot, and alongside that, the history of America. Okay. So then he says, once you've done that, then you've finished that reading history, reading history, you've educated yourself in that kind of way, and you've comprehensively seen different sciences, how they work. Then you start to train for being a statesman, a faqih, a scholar, a qadi, okay, or someone who's going to run the affairs of the state, amir, for example, or vizier, right, and so on, so a minister, whatever the case may be, right. So that's the third stage of your education. And this time, in this third stage, you are traveling, you're observing, you're meeting people, you're expanding your cultural horizon. Okay, so that's the third stage, and likewise, he said, all of it has to be acquired by books. The education of yourself in these sciences has to be done by you. You have to bear the burden of it. It'll be a waste of time to go to a scholar, a teacher of that, right? So I'm from the top of my, I've just read it with you, right? And so I'm just from the top of my mind, I'm just trying to the best of my ability and to the utmost honesty, trying to express what the author has said, right? His thesis, because then I can and only and truly only then can I come back and critique where he's wrong and where he's right. Okay, is everyone with me so far, inshallah? Does everyone see how we structure, how we put on this sort of meat onto the original skeleton that we laid down, inshallah? Excellent. May I know, Osab, is this sister or a brother? Okay. Excellent, sister, mashallah. Well done. Perfect. Right? So this is what the sister has mentioned, right? This is the summary of your inspectional reading, the structure and the meaning. Okay, you've actually and accurately summarized and internalized the thesis of the author. Now is your turn to come back and start the second stage of learning, which is the logic stage, i.e., analytical reading of this. Okay, and while you're doing the analytical reading, you might be intrigued to do a syntopical analysis of the topic, right? So, first of all, he says that he wants to give him some advice. What qualifies him to give advice? Right? A question, right? He's not a prophet or a scholar or an educationist. He is surely an educated man. So these are the kind of questions you should be asking. Don't go easy on the author, right? And what are the intentions? Why is he even bothered with this advice? So when you dig deeper into that, you will understand that this guy is his nephew, and he wants him to marry his daughter, and he wants him to run the state sometime, become a well-abled statesman. Hence, he wants to be of utmost. He's used the word service a lot, right? I think you would have paid attention to this, right? Your most affectionate, humble servant, right? And he says, for example, if these you say maybe as great as you wish is a sincere desire of dear sir, right? And so on and so forth. I think he's used the word service a few times here, right? So that's his motivation. Okay. Again, I just find this funny. Cousin marriages, right? How ethical is that, right? Based on the a Western mindset. طيب. So, خلاص, let's move on. Then he says, a longer race through life may have entitled me to see some truths which have not yet been presented to your observations. So he's assuming that just because he's lived more, right, I have more observation, and therefore my observation must definitely lead to better results, and surely is more worthier than anything that you could possibly observe on your own and reason in your own limited time that you've lived in your life, right? That's an assumption he's making, that just because I've lived longer and I've seen more things, right, and I have more intimate knowledge of the country, I am in a better position to advise you on how to learn better. If he's correct in this or not, that's the second. That's the next question. But the first question is, what makes him entitled? What makes him qualified to give this advice in the first place? Just because he's lived longer, living longer, is that a criteria for being more suited for advice in this particular experience, right? Especially in the field of walking as an exercise. Um, Now we know that walking is, although it is one of the most beneficial and important exercises, something alongside walking is more important. That is uh, muscle training, strength training, weight training, because muscle atrophy happens and muscles break down as you grow old, and you need to train yourself. You need to eat enough protein to build muscle. You need to have enough salt in your system to hydrate yourself and your neurons firing and so on and so forth, to keep active in your mental capacity. You need to be lifting weights because that increases bone density. So when you grow old and you fall down, for example, you don't end up breaking your bones. So muscle training, very, very important. Okay. As much as valuable his advice on walk is, right? He's he's neglected the other piece of advice. Strength training, as we know now, is much more important. A portion of it, or is much more important than just simply walking. Walking definitely strengthens your spine. It increases your bone density. It increases your uh, uh, the BDNF factor, the brain drive neurofactor, which makes you more intelligent. All of that is true, right? But strength training does that more so, because at the same time as you are increasing your muscle strength and so on and so forth, you're building your bone density, you are increasing your overall immunity. Shock, hardship, and he actually he acknowledges this principle, when he mentions the word. So, coming back. So you're asking these questions now, right? So then he says the foundations of all, of acquiring any further knowledge to build, have this kind of foundation to build every superstructure. He uses the word superstructure, right? Superstructure is something which is built upon a foundation. Super is from the Latin root of being upper, right? Being above. Superstructure, something that you build above something. Okay. Right. So foundations in language and mathematics is that let's reason as Muslims. Do we say, is that something that the Prophet taught us? A foundation in language and mathematics is the proper foundation for building every superstructure, right? So question, right? You ask questions, a lot of questions. You poke, in our epistemology as Muslims, we know that as a community, our foundations are set forth in the Sharia, in the Quran and the Sunnah. Yes, Arabic language, of course, is the pillar of our religion, and every Muslim is supposed to learn the Arabic language to the best of their abilities, to the highest mastery they can possibly acquire. However, mathematics was never emphasized. That's something that is something that people will learn as mm, mandated by their jobs and their trade, right? When it becomes important, right? But language was definitely something that was emphasized by the Sahaba, the Prophet himself, and so on and so forth. Because Arabic is the religion, the religion's tongue, right? It's the tongue of all Muslims, right? The Quran is in Arabic, and so a good foundation, strong foundation in language is key. Definitely true. Alongside that, though, there is a spiritual foundation. There's tarbiyah, right? That is a foundation. If you don't have that, you can acquire all the facts and knowledge, and you can be a very good critical thinker and a great deep philosopher. All of that is going to come crashing down. All of that is going to become useless and worthless if it's not grounded in the ilm that Allah Azza wa Jalla has sent us. For us, the foundations are taken from the religion of Allah Azza wa Jalla. Okay? The religion of Allah Azza wa Jalla. So that does not completely negate his thesis, but we are saying that as Muslims, we have our own foundations and we have our own priorities. And so we can dig deep into this, and we can ask more questions, and we can sort of look into, okay, what foundations in Islam are we supposed to exactly have? So tarbiyah is good, Arabic language is good, Quran, some memorization of the Quran is important. That's a foundation. Um, you know, company of good Salihin, and so on and so forth, all of that. And other elements of, so you would go out of this context and you would look at literature that talks about Islamic tarbiyah. You would perhaps go and look at books that talk about this. I have some books over here on this topic. Tarbiyah of children, and so on and so forth, how Islam purports it. Okay. So inshallah, so you're asking and poking holes and critiquing and analyzing. So we more or less, for the sake of a general education, like to be able to acquire things, facts, and then reason upon them from books. Yes, we need languages and we need mathematics. So let's agree to disagree to some degree. Then something that he mentions over here, that the second component of the stage of preparation is to be comprehensively educated, and be comprehensively educated as well on the same side in history. Okay. We can ask the same question. Does Islam say that? Do we have to be comprehensively educated? Like, does every Muslim have to be comprehensively educated? Were all the Sahaba comprehensively educated in astronomy, natural philosophy, all of that? Majority of the Sahaba could not even read and write, but they still toppled the superpowers of their time. They still became the world leaders. So for us, our theology, our philosophy, our epistemology uh, does not have these principles as the foundation. Yes, we value these principles because the Sahaba later did acquire these sciences, because when fatwa are supposed to be directed at people and they ask questions to do with these things, the scholar has to learn these things. So he has to comprehensively educate himself as per his need. Okay? There's so many things to study. I mean, he's mentioned only a few things, right? Only the things that were known at his time. Now, there's like 20 different subfields in just computer science, right? Object-oriented programming, this and that. And each of those things are like they require a lifetime of expertise. So what do we, well, Islam does not, Islam is practical, okay? And Islam wants to give us the shortest possible way to achieve that. Okay, inshallah? At the same time, the kind of world we live in, we do at some point need to learn these things, or at least things which are important for our times, okay? Which is why we have, in this program, we keep these things in mind. So when we are going to be reading literature, it's going to be tightly packed with, Islamic critique, of things. How does Islam see this? How does Islam talk about this? Is this argument really true? What's the Islamic narrative on this, right? So that Muslims, when they're studying psychology, they are, for example, they are completely in line with the Islamic narrative on this. When they're studying political science, to know what the principles of Islamic politics are. How does Islam propose politics to be run in a country, and so on and so forth, okay? So we can sort of just go through this and reason and and then his argument as to, these things, while you're in Edinburgh, you will never be able to acquire this anymore. Is this true in our times? As I said, no. We can, where we have YouTube, we have so many other platforms to acquire knowledge with, and then of course we don't have to enroll in a university. We can just attend open lectures. We can just discuss our lead readings with the professor, find time to go and see them. You don't have to pay the university to go and see a professor. If you live in the same town as I did, close to Cambridge, I would just go there, drop down and meet professors and just discuss with them my readings, right? In fact, one of my teachers was a PhD from Cambridge, professor, and I would often when I was in sixth form, I would often just write my own essays in philosophy, and I would just discuss my readings with her, and I never felt with this kind of education that I had, alhamdulillah, it wasn't at that point. It wasn't planned. It wasn't as intentional as it is now that we are developing this program. At that point, it was guided through Allah's tawfiq entirely. And then, what Allah, sort of guided me through, He said, do this and do that. So I would just follow what made sense to me at that time. And it just turns out that I was completely on the right path. Alhamdulillah, I was up to something, right? A lot of people would just spend grands of, thousands of pounds to acquire the same thing I would just get in a few months of time, right? Of my own reading, of my own effort, then discussing my thesis with a professor, and that's it, I'm done, right? I've learned enough about this and that science through just this kind of inquiry. Okay. So a lot of his assumptions about, now they don't stand true. You can be anywhere in the world and still be comprehensive educated. There are books now. There are books now that you can find in all subjects, and they are more or less um, just as useful as a lecture, right? Just as useful as a lecture. You have student platforms like Quora and others where you can get in touch with students who are studying in top universities and say to them, can I just have a little session with you like once every 3 months or something, just so that I can have your notes and have some access to what you study in this in a nutshell, so that way you can just discuss the most relevant topics of a field that you want to comprehensively educate yourself in. There's many ways. So we're not just limited. So we're just critiquing this. We're going through this and saying, what, this applies to us, good. This doesn't apply to us. What's the value in this? Um, are these sciences even applicable? What's okay? So and then perhaps you might not even know. You might not even know what botany is, what anatomy is, or astronomy is, or astrophysics is. You might, you know, come across these terms. So you go and look it up on Google or whatever the resource you have, and so on and so forth. Okay. Um, then there's minor details like all these branches of science will be better attained by attending courses lecture in them. We've critiqued this point, right? And he says that the best courses upon earth are within your reach and being delivered in your native language, so you lose no part of their benefit. Is this true? If you study in a second language, do you actually lose the crux of the information, or do you only lose the tertiary, the external, the extra bits? So you can go deeper. The more questions you ask, the more particulars you poke holes in, the more questions you ask, and the more questions you ask, the more visitors open, and then you go and look it up. So you can engage with all kinds of literature in that manner. The deeper you want to go, you can choose for yourself. And inshallah, in this program that we are proposing, inshallah, the students will have all of that done for them. We will be guiding, we will make sure that the books which need to be spent time on, we make sure that students spend time on. And books which are not as, which have some benefit that we've placed them in our program for, that benefit is sought from them, and we move on from those books to other books which are then develop on it. Okay? Okay, so then he says something important here. Every science is auxiliary to every other. Do we agree with that? Do we disagree with that? Why would he say that? How is botany relevant to physics? Okay, so inshallah, this is essentially how you go deeper. And then if you each of these topics, comprehensive education, foundation, history, guided readings in history, what kinds of things you would want to read, you can go up and look at each of these things individually and read about. Now you have Chat GPT, you have so many options now that, right? So you go and read on the topic, on other resources, and so you can expand as much as you want and or as little as you want. Okay. Hopefully, this has been eye-opening to some of you, inshallah, and beneficial to most others. And I hope, inshallah, that I'll see most of you on the other side joining our program. If there's any questions about the program itself and from what we've done, any comments on or questions, inquiries about this, feel free to ask them now, and then we will end this session after these question and answers, inshallah. I'll just reiterate the point of Tajdeed Club is to read literature cover to cover in most cases. And the point of this is to provide an education, a self-guided education, and so on and so forth, inshallah. Um, but the burden of education of this is going to be on the student. The whole purpose of this is that student takes the responsibility of the education. Our job will be to provide you with the reading guides, the milestones, the questions, the weekly, moderated sessions, and then a monthly session with me personally, and all of that, inshallah. So if anyone wants to question on that, they can question me on that, please feel free to do so. But the point is that this is a reading program. You are going to be learning primarily through reading resources, literature. So you cover to cover. And the same thing applies to the Arabic strand of it, as does with the English, inshallah. So all of your standard works on Aqidah and your fiqh and usul and hadith and tafsir and nahu and sarf, all of that will be covered. Okay, all that will be covered. Can we get access to a list of books we will go through in the program? Yes, inshallah. For all those who have signed up to our trial period, inshallah, they'll be informed of the exact books they'll be reading, inshallah, in the relevant channels, inshallah. Yes, so a very important point here. A lot of students want to learn and they have this urge to, there's so much, they have so many questions, but they never know where to begin, so they waste time. That's the point. The point of a guided program is to save you that energy. We have done all that work for you. 10 years of effort has gone into this project. So you don't have to waste time in deciding which book is better than the other for this particular. So you just trust our expertise in this, inshallah, and you just read. One of the sisters, she says, I never realized how much actually goes into reading. This was really beneficial, and it makes sense why I wasn't really gaining much benefit from things I'd read. And this is common for a lot of students. Because they're never trained how to read and learn for themselves, they can never truly benefit as much as they possibly could have. Yes, inshallah. So the link to the sign up group was posted in the Telegram channel of Tajdeed Seminary. For those who have not accessed it, who can't see it, I'll just send the link here as well quickly. So those of you who want to join the group, inshallah, they can do that. And I'll mention this link in a description in the YouTube upload as well, inshallah. I would mention the structure of how the program is going to work, inshallah, quickly. Oh, the link is expired. Right. Let me just send you the link that is active. Just 1 second, please. Okay. Right. This link should be active, inshallah. There was a limited offer for those who wanted to join the free trial, and we're extending that for today, inshallah. Okay. Any advice for individuals who didn't really get into reading when younger or struggle to read for long? Um, I'm in front of you. That's me. I wasn't into reading when I was younger. I didn't struggle to read, but I was just not interested in reading when I was younger. I only became interested in reading and educating myself when I was, alhamdulillah, I was smart. I would get A stars and 90, 90%, 95% above in all my exams, alhamdulillah. But that was just Allah's gift that I had. But I was never studious. I did not like to read. I did not like to study. I would spend most of my time playing physical sports like football mostly. Subhanallah. And debating clubs and chess. I was into chess at that point when I was younger. It was only until when I was 17 that I became practicing. Before that, I wasn't practicing. Okay, before the age of 17, it's when I turned 17 and I became practicing. I started praying. That I got into da'wah. I felt the need that if I'm practicing and this is the truth, and I should be telling others about this truth. So when I got into that business of da'wah, I felt like I had to study. So one of my first adventures into study was reading my uncle's home library in 2 months, because I was so interested in giving dawah to the Christians at that point, subhanAllah. Um, I stayed with him for 2 months and I just read a lot of his books, subhanAllah. And to the point that I memorized so many of the references in the Bible word for word. I could quote the Deuteronomy 18:18 and this and that, John 1:1 and whatnot. So I could quote these. So that was my beginning. Like I found a purpose. Like you need a purpose to read, right? And I always say this. Um, if you are going to be studying for the sake of Allah Azza wa Jal and to revive His Deen, that is the point of all this education. Um, you are seeking ilm for a very, very high purpose. Ibn al-Qayyim rahimahullah says that anyone who seeks ilm with the intention of reviving the deen of Allah Azza wa Jal for the people, for the Muslims, then his rank is right after the rank of the prophets. He's with the Siddiqeen. Subhanallah. When you realize that, that's a huge motivation, right? You're really seeking knowledge for a purpose now. You're not just seeking knowledge for no purpose. It's not because you love books. I don't like books, right? I'll be honest. If I didn't have to, if I wasn't practicing, I probably would not be reading. I wouldn't read. I would just do, as I was. I would engage in debates. I would play football. I would go on hikes. I used to cycle cross country from city to city. I could actually go on like a day-long rides, right? That's the kind of thing I enjoyed, subhanAllah, when I was a kid. I would be doing that kind of stuff. I wouldn't be reading. I wouldn't be trying to build a global project, trying to educate a whole generation of Muslims. That wouldn't be something I would be doing if I wasn't practicing. So if purpose is something that drives you. So even if you were not into reading and studying when you were younger or struggled to read, all of that, inshallah, is not a problem. Allah's tawfiq is something that we all uh, want, and it's only through that we can develop ourselves, inshallah. Okay, so no worries if you were not into reading when you were younger and years have passed away, and it's not a problem at all, inshallah. Exactly. Drive and passion. Drive and passion. You have to. Right. So the structure of this, inshallah, will be that the level one essentially is about 15 books. Okay. And it's paced in a way where you study a book a month, so you're slowly building your habit of reading. Okay, and of course, because you're still getting used to reading deeply, so a book is a good target to read in a month, so that you're spending at least 2.5 hours roughly a day, so you get to do the work properly. After this level, you double the amount of books, so you read 2 books a month in second level, so 30 books in that year, in a year, or if it takes a bit longer than that. Then you have the next level, you do 50 books in that year, and that's roughly a book every week. Okay, a book every single week. And then level 4 again is the same way, a book a week, right? So you build up to that slowly, inshallah. Okay. The way it works is um, you'll be provided milestones, reading questions, a guided inquiry sheet, so that you know exactly what kind of questions you should be asking. Inshallah, as you sort of go through the books that you're reading, inshallah, and then at the end of it, you will be provided summaries and our guides on the book that you've read, a summary and our guide and our take. So you understand, okay, this point was discussed in the book. This is what Islam says. This is how we should, as Muslims, understand all of this, and so on and so forth. So everything that is to do with a comprehensive understanding of a particular topic from Islamic side of things and from the point of view of the author and all of that. Right, that's the literature that you'll be getting. Then once a week, you have a moderated reading or discussion session amongst your peers. So we will appoint moderators. Okay, you'll have moderators or seminar leaders, inshallah, sisters, females for the sisters and males for the brothers. They'll have separate sessions. These will not be conducted by myself, but they'll be conducted by my students and other teachers and other mashayikh. And then because we want to be engaging a big enough community, inshallah. So I will be primarily focused on producing the literature and the summaries and the milestones and all of that. And then we'll just have group leaders, seminar leaders for our groups for a week. And then in the last week of every month, you'll have a session with me. Okay, so inshallah, we'll go through everything together and I'll be probing you with questions, and inshallah, we'll have to engage. And in this engagement, we will have brothers and sisters together in the same class. And this engagement will sometimes engage verbal communication, okay, and sometimes just through the message that we are having. Depends on the discussion and how engaging we have to make it and how important it is for us to engage in that manner. Okay, so that's a monthly structure. So you'll have partners and groups in which you are going to be you will be holding each other accountable, and you'll be meeting every week to discuss your readings and asking. There'll be seminar leaders who will make sure, just like in universities, how universities have seminars every week. And I'm sure everyone who has seen a university set up, you have seminars every week, and there's a PhD student, not the actual professor, who leads the seminar, and then you have sessions with the professors separately. Okay, inshallah, that's how it is. It's only £25 a month, roughly. That's how we are starting, inshallah. It's just £25 a month per student. But we will not be charging per month. We'll be charging for the year, just so that we have a commitment from the students for the whole year. So we don't have dropouts in the middle. Very, very important that people commit, inshallah. Okay. I hope, inshallah, everyone is clear on that and everyone is good with that, inshallah. Any last questions before we call it a day? So you'll have a group, okay, a sisters group. Everyone can sort of discuss their partners with amongst themselves, inshallah, and then you can choose. Yes, definitely. There's no but the group that you will be placed in, because we're only starting with a limited group. We're only starting with about 30 students. We only have about 21 students, and I'm hoping a few more signups will happen in the coming week or so. So let's say about 20 to 30 students that we have. That's a small group. Some of them are going to be boys, and the others are going to be sisters, inshallah. So you have one group, and then you can choose your partners, study partners. And then you'll have one big group in which you're going to be having a seminar every week. And then the whole batch will be doing a monthly seminar with myself. Yes, sister. Jazakallah khair. Inshallah, I'll just update the link on the promotional message, just that people can join. Jazakallahu khair. I'll do that. Barakallahu feekum. Hopefully, everyone is happy with this, how the session went, and I hope you guys learned a lot, or at least a little. Alhamdulillah, and it was beneficial for all of you, inshallah. And this is just the surface. I personally think we've not even touched the surface. I would have gone much deeper, you know, and because the subject of learning and education is quite important to me as an educationist, and I would have critiqued a lot of his assumptions, and this whole genre. There's a discussion of classical liberal education, because this comprehensive education is normally called a liberal education, okay, a liberal arts education, versus an Islamic understanding of it, what an Islamic understanding of a comprehensive education is. This is the topic of for another day, inshallah. But we have kept this in mind with our curriculum, inshallah. Inshallah. Right? So let's call it a day here, inshallah. I hope everyone found it beneficial. Please make dua this Allah Azza wa Jal makes this project a success and we achieve our goals. Barakallah feekum for attending. Jazakumullah khairan, inshallah. I hope to see everyone on the other side. Subhanakallah wa bihamdik. Ashhadu an la ilaha illa anta astaghfiruka wa atubu ilayk. اللهم تقبل منا إنك أنت السميع العليم وتب علينا إنك أنت التواب الرحيم وصلى الله على النبي وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين برحمتك يا أرحم الراحمين. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. Until next time.